Well, good morning. I want to continue this walk that we are doing with Jesus through the Gospel of Mark. And we're coming to a point in this story that it begins to get pretty serious. As we have said, Jesus has turned his eyes back towards Jerusalem, and he knows what's going to happen when he arrives there. Today our passage is Mark 8, verses 31 through 33. And let me read this to you, and then we'll talk about it. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he was stating the matter plainly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning around and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on God's interests, but on man's." Okay. They knew that Jesus had opposition. They knew that there were some that were wanting to get rid of Jesus in one way or another, but they weren't imagining this. How could they wrap their mind around how serious a threat this was? To banish Jesus, to ignore him, to betray him in different ways. They could have imagined that. But for the people in charge to actually kill him, this simply didn't make much sense to them. It was too much to comprehend. When Jesus said he would be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, I think these disciples may have seen that almost like we would look at a conspiracy theory today. How could they reject him? I mean, after all, he had proven who he was through his miracles, through the amazing teaching he was doing. How could they choose to kill him? Reject him on some level, but not kill him? Okay, there were some of them whose dislike for Jesus was so very obvious that they might have imagined some kind of violence. But to be rejected by the whole of the upper level of Jewish life, this really didn't make any sense to them. Hadn't Jesus said that he had come to fulfill the law and the prophets? Wouldn't those leaders be excited that they were on hand to see these things happening? Well, no, because they were not accepting that Jesus was Messiah, their Christ. Then, when he said that he would be killed, that was too much. How could that possibly be? What kind of society did they live in that those people in the upper level of Jewish life would be so angry that they would kill Jesus? That was incomprehensible. It was too much. Surely those leaders wouldn't do that, would they? And then he said, after 3 days he would rise again. What is that? That sounds crazy. But Jesus didn't really sound crazy. He wasn't throwing a fit. He wasn't ranting or crying. He wasn't acting like a crazy person at all. It simply says that he was stating the matter plainly. No hyper emotion, no pity party, just the facts. This is what's going to happen. Well, Peter wasn't going to have it. He wasn't going to stand for that. He wasn't going to allow Jesus to say such crazy things. He wasn't going to allow Jesus to go down that path. And Peter himself was really, give Peter credit, he was ready to die for Jesus. He was not going to let that happen. So Peter rebuked Jesus. Imagine that. He told Jesus that he was wrong. You think maybe a little too much of Peter's pride was at work here? Maybe Peter was trying to accomplish something that was far too small. Well, Jesus fired back. Jesus, at this point, more than just stating the matter plainly, he evidently, it sounds like there was an emotional part of this as well. He said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan, for you're not setting your mind on God's interests, but on man's." Wow. Peter thought that he was standing up for what was right. He didn't realize that he was standing in the way of God's eternal plan. You know, sometimes I wonder if we do that. Have a thoughtful day. Bye.
They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope.